We are at a critical moment in our history as a diocese, and it is essential for us to reflect upon and evaluate our current status as a local church, as well as establish a vision for future ministry. In May, the cohort submitted their first preliminary suggestions for parish reorganization, and the Diocesan Planning Commission responded with their own recommendations for further consideration by the parishes and cohorts. In most cases, the cohorts proposed necessary and creative alternatives in order to align the number of parishes with the personnel and resources available. I appreciate how difficult it was for the parishes and cohorts to suggest changes which could substantially alter their long-standing parish communities and traditions. In some cases, on the other hand, cohorts simply called for retaining the status quo, which we clearly understand is not an option. And so the responses from the Diocesan Commission caused concern for a number of parishes and communities. Nonetheless, it is important to remember that this was only the first stage for making preliminary recommendations, and that the cohorts and Diocesan Commission would have additional time to consider alternative structures. Since that time, cohorts have actively considered their own first suggestions together with the recommendations of the Diocesan Commission in order to propose a final recommendation for the Diocesan Commission to consider. These recommendations were submitted in October and were carefully reviewed by the Diocesan Commission. On November 1st, the Diocesan Planning Commission submitted to me their final recommendations. It is now my responsibility to prayerfully evaluate these recommendations in order to formulate a comprehensive plan for implementation throughout the diocese. Although I was not involved in these early stages of the planning process, I did take necessary measures in view of the recommendations published in June. In particular, I addressed two concerns. The first involved parish buildings. When recommending locations for the parish church and worship sites, the Diocesan Commission stated in almost all circumstances that their recommendations were conditional, depending upon a structural and a long-term maintenance appraisal. Consequently, I commissioned an evaluation by a reputable engineering firm of every parish building in order to ensure that the buildings to be employed are structurally sound and cost-effective to maintain. Secondly, taking note of the recommendations involving pastors, sacramental ministers, and pastoral administrators, I was uncertain as to our ability to assign such personnel, considering the limited number of available priests and administrators. And so I decided to meet personally with every priest, active and retired, as well as every pastoral administrator, in order to consider their age, health conditions, retirement plans, current assignments, future preferences, and any other factors which could affect any future assignment. I'm scheduled to complete these interviews in early December. These two issues, sound structures and available personnel, will weigh heavily in any final decisions. From the beginning, however, planning tomorrow's parishes has been about more than priest personnel and parish finances. Our desired outcome is to establish parishes which are stronger, reinvigorated, liturgically alive, actively engaged in outreach to those in need, creatively addressing the spiritual and social development of our young people, and deeply focused on the work of evangelization. Every one of these goals will factor into the forthcoming decisions. I would also note that during this past year, I received letters from concerned parishioners about the recommendations being made regarding their own parishes. These letters were shared with the members of the Diocesan Commission to ensure that they would evaluate these comments and observations in order to arrive at a more informed conclusion. In most of these letters, the authors stated that this reorganization was necessary and in fact long overdue, and that they would prayerfully support me in my decision-making responsibility. And now I ask each and every one of you, the faithful of this diocese, for your prayerful support as I deliberate on the recommendations placed before me. During this process, by reason of canon law, I will consult with the Presbyteral Council, as well as with those who can provide essential information. I hope not to delay unnecessarily my decisions. At the same time, I will take whatever time is required to make sound judgments which will affect our local parishes and the diocese as a whole for years to come. It is my intention to announce these decisions in mid to late January. This has been a challenging, intense, and emotional process. I'm grateful to all who have participated in it. Through it all, I remain confident that with the grace of God and the goodwill of our faithful people, the Diocese of Saginaw will more effectively fulfill the work of the Lord and be well positioned for a future full of hope. God love you.